A source of chemicals that have polluted more than a half.
To your New England Jeep Eagle dealers, where you can expect the best.
State environmental officials are trying to track down the source of chemicals that have polluted more than a half-dozen wells in South Berwick. The DEP has only recently begun working on the problem, but families in the affected area may have been drinking the contaminated water for a decade. NewsCenter's Pat Callahan reports it's a problem that could be happening all over the state.
That's in our tanks, our hot water tanks, our toilets, whatever. And that's what our filter's supposed to be taking care of.
As distasteful as that little jar of water looks, it's what can't be seen that scares these people so. The Department of Environmental Protection has identified 7 contaminated wells at homes on the Hooper Sands Road in South Berwick. Various chemical solvents and hydrocarbons have turned up. One family began suspecting a problem more than a decade ago.
It was really bad. It had a wicked odor, and I became really sick in '78 with ulcers on my colon. And the doctor thought it was, the water, but they checked into it and nothing was ever done, so we just dropped it.
Bacteria tests then showed no problems, but within the last couple of years, other people started getting sick.
My daughter, the oldest one, she's been passing out at work, and she's been passing out for 2 years, and right now she's all right.
Stop drinking the water.
Oh yeah, we stopped drinking the water.
They've all stopped drinking the water now. The DEP has installed filters that seem to be helping, and the state is also providing bottled drinking water. What no one knows for certain yet is who is responsible for dumping waste that seeped into the wells. Part of the problem may stem from waste the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard apparently dumped in the area back in the 1960s. The shipyard is looking into the matter. The realization of problems here in South Berwick only serves to reinforce the fear that there are hundreds, perhaps thousands of people around the state drinking contaminated water without knowing it. These people worry about what long-term effects the water might have on their children, and they wonder how the problem can be solved. They'd like to be connected to the town water supply, but officials might try drilling deeper wells first.
That's something we're not looking too optimistic about, but, because you're always going to wonder, when will this water turn?
In the face of a truly frightening situation, these families know they have to have patience. In South Berwick, Pat Callahan, NewsCenter.
And medical waste. Last summer, everyone was talking about it. Now, a state task force is looking at creating...
But the word yes makes things happen, especially when spoken by...
Inspection conducted tests in the area today to determine the extent of the contamination. NewsCenter's Noel Nordquist reports on the chemical mess, a mess which started years ago.
The problem of contaminated well water is not new to Dick and Holly Roy. They've been living with it for years.
In 1978, when I became sick, I was put in the hospital. I was sick for over a year. They found I had ulcers on my colon, and the doctor thought it was something to do with the water, and they contacted the state, but nothing was ever done.
The problem's not new to Paul Hussey either. He admits his company dumped dangerous chemicals from the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard into the field which adjoins the Roy's property.
At that time, we, disposed of it the way they told us to. Right now, it's come back to haunt us, but...
He even showed the EPA where.
I've showed them the spots, the exact spots.
The worst part about all this is that the Roy's story is not unusual. The Department of Environmental Protection has hundreds of suspicious complaints from all around the state.
Why didn't the state come down and monitor my well? Here it is. There they dumped. What? They shouldn't have let me even put a well here, let alone a house.
Well, why?
It's lack of the state.
Yeah, why do you assume that it's the state's responsibility to regulate where you as a homeowner
the
put your
state
well?
is letting them dump sewage and garbage and crap.
Yeah.
Why don't they monitor where it's going? Now, it's 10 years later, it's a half mile away.
Again, the system just isn't designed to do that.
Then there's something wrong with the system.
Representatives from the Department of Environmental Protection were at the Roy's today doing more tests on the water and on the air. They say it may take years to resolve the problem, years to uncover all the locations of the buried contaminants. And even if they dig it all up, in a sense, it's too late, because the hazardous chemicals have already seeped into the aquifer.
It's a hard lesson to learn, but no one wants to deal with it unless it's actually down in their well.
So a small businessman is left to face possible lawsuits for doing what he says the Navy told him to do. In this small neighborhood, is left with a field leaking poison into its water. In South Berwick, Noelle Nordquist, NewsCenter.
Officials at the Augusta Mental Health Institute confirm that there has been another death at the hospital. In the past 2 weeks, 5
O'Connor site, and reports there's a staggering emotional price tag as well.
We've lived here since...
Harold Irish has been waiting for the old O'Connor dump to get cleaned up for over 15 years. His interest in the issue is a very personal one.
Our involvement was that our boy came down with leukemia, and he used to play in this area over here, and that's why we're kind of concerned about it. We lost about 8 people with cancer on the street.
Environmental officials say there are reports of a so-called cancer cluster in the area, but no proof yet that O'Connor is to blame. Those studies take years, like the years it's already taken just to agree on a proper way to clean up the site.
But it does take somewhere from 5 to 6 years to go through the phase of identifying the problem and designing a remedy.
The O'Connor site here in Augusta is the most contaminated Superfund site in the state, and it'll be the most expensive to clean up as well, $14.2 million. And that cleanup could take a very long time.
To go through the groundwater treatment process and to restore the contaminated groundwater will take nearly 3 decades.
Now to the issue of payment. Central Maine Power concedes it is partially to blame. The company unknowingly dumped contaminated transformers here in the 50s and 60s. But $14 million is quite a bill.
You know, our board of directors and our management has to consider the price and all the details of the plan, and I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate a mutually agreeable settlement.
The cleanup can begin in a year, but it could be the year 2020 before it's safe to tear down this fence. In Augusta, Lee Nelson, Eyewitness News.
The O'Connor cleanup is not the only new project for the EPA and the DEP. $1.7 million is earmarked to help clean up the water supply on Hooper Sands Road in South Berwick. During the 60s and 70s, waste oils and chemicals were buried in unlined pits on the lots.
We will be doing continuous sampling of some of the wells throughout the area to determine the scope of contamination and whether or not there are any other contamination of drinking water problems that need to be dealt with. Right now, there are 8 residences that are receiving a bottled water and have filters on their water supply.
The DEP says testing on the Hooper Sands site is set to begin early next month. The president of the Shipbuilders Union at Bath Iron Works is out. Ainsley McPhee was out.
$1.7 million to remove a long list of hazardous chemicals from the Hooper Sands Road site. The site is littered with 55-gallon drums believed to have held chemicals like industrial solvents. The first step in the cleanup will be a survey of the site to find out exactly what's there. The EPA will also help pay for a new drinking water supply for nearby residents whose wells have been contaminated. For those residents, the beginning of the cleanup does not mean the end of their troubles. In this Environ Maine report tonight, News 13's Mike Saxtetter tells us it will be a while before the people who live on Hooper Sands Road have water that doesn't have the potential to make them sick.
The Titu family has only 1 chicken left. This time last year, there were 25. The family believes contaminated water killed the others.
Last fall, when I cooped them up, they all started, acting drunk, got the diarrhea, and just croaked 2 or 3 days later.
These are all water tests, would you believe?
The family believes the 4- and 5-syllable chemicals in their water are what put Dick Tito in the hospital last winter for fainting spells. The state now provides this household and 7 others around here with bottled water for cooking and drinking. A state-installed filter system is supposed to clean tap water for other purposes. But the director of the Hazardous Materials Bureau admits it doesn't work very well.
You don't go in the shower and stay in there like you did when you thought you had clean water. I mean, you get in and get out.
The next step is an experimental aeration system to bubble out the contamination. The state is weighing the options for providing permanent help to the people who live along this road. One option is piping in town water from North or South Berwick. The other is sinking a new well outside the contaminated area. Neither will purify the water coming from the Titu's kitchen faucet anytime soon.
EPA has told us that we should be able to get water in here in a year. It may take as long as 2 years, but it's impossible to do tomorrow or the next day.
The state says its goal is to allow these people to stay in their homes. That doesn't mean their lives will be normal in the meantime. Mike Sackstetter, News 13, South Berwick.
It's believed most of the contamination on the Hooper Sands road site came roadside is littered with hundreds of barrels which used to contain chemicals and waste oils. The EPA was on the site today and will come back tomorrow. The $1.7 million cleanup will include help finding a new drinking water supply for nearby residents whose wells have been contaminated. However, that will take a while.
EPA has told us that we should be able to get water in here in a year. It may take as long as 2 years, but it's impossible to do tomorrow or the next day.
We'd like water down here. I mean, we did get $1.7 million for our cleanup, but I'd appreciate water.
In the meantime, the state has provided bottled water for cooking and drinking and a filter for tap water. However, the director of Maine's Hazardous Material Bureau admits the filters aren't working very well. Kim?
Governor John McKernan has made his choice for director of the newly created Maine Solid Waste Authority.
Since the state declined to put up a fence cordoning off the Hooper Sands toxic dump site, locals and environmental activists have taken matters into their own hands.
I don't think it's asking much to put a fence around for the safety of the wildlife and the children. We've had 3 dogs, 2 of them being Dobermans, and they've all died of big tumors. What happened is they'd get over here, they'd roll in it, and then they would come back, and of course the kids would hug the pets, but all 3 of them had to be put away because of tumors.
Holly Roy lives in the house next door to the site. It is one of 10 houses that has water too contaminated to drink or even shower in. The toxic chemicals came from the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. The Navy hired a private contractor to dump the chemicals here in this field and a number of other sites in the area. But to date, neither the Navy nor that contractor has paid a nickel toward the cleanup. Instead, the state has shelled out over $250,000. By the time the cleanup is finished, the cost could run up to $4 million. The agencies responsible for the cleanup don't have a definitive answer as to when the project will be complete.
I mean, we're working on it. It just takes a long time, and it's frustrating for us. It's frustrating for everybody involved.
The frustration about the pace of cleanup is only part of it. Some of the people here have a sinking feeling these piles of contaminated dirt. In South Berwick, Noel Nordquist, NewsCenter.
Well, not a pretty day for most of us. Russ Murley says there is hope for tomorrow, though. His forecast next.
Now, for the news of what Maine's all about, the News 13 Noon Report.
2 Portland men could be arraigned as early as this afternoon on federal drug charges. Portland police have arrested 29-year-old Danny Cassell and charged him with distributing heroin. Also charged with heroin distribution is 35-year-old Russell Wogan. Lieutenant Richard Rizzo says the pair apparently started selling on Munjoy Hill after other alleged heroin dealers were arrested a few weeks ago.
Since the Babbitt's arrest last month, Daniel Cassell and Russell Wogan have taken over distributing heroin in the city. We made a buy from them earlier this week, and at that time developed information that they were picking up some more heroin.
Police say they found 92 bags of heroin on the 2 men when they were arrested. They say the 2 were stopped in Scarborough. Police believe they were making their way north to Portland to sell the heroin. Norway Police Chief James DeNormandy is now on administrative leave. Town Manager David Holt announced he placed the chief on administrative leave at a special meeting of the town selectmen last night. DeNormandy will be on leave with pay until August 14th. Holt says at that point, he'll decide what action to take. Last week, officers on the Norway police force presented the town selectmen with a letter of no confidence in their chief and asked that he resign or be fired. The town manager says the letter expressed only general concerns and that the officers have agreed to bring forward more specific charges that he will review. Ranking Officer Sergeant Ernie Dunham will run the police department while de Normandy is on leave. President George Bush formally turns in his nomination of New Hampshire Judge David Souter to the U.S. Supreme Court today. Souter, meanwhile, is on Capitol Hill. It's his first chance to try to win over the senators who will vote on his confirmation. Bob Schieffer has more.
Campaigning in Philadelphia, the president conceded his nominee's views aren't widely known, but added he likes it that way.
There was no single issue, no litmus test or standard dominating my decision to nominate. And I will add, there should be no litmus test in the process of confirmation.
Keeping it vague quickly emerged as the White House strategy to win Senate confirmation for Souter. And just as quickly, pro-choice women's groups said that wouldn't do.
If Judge Souter continues to refuse to reveal his position on abortion rights, we will be left with no option but to treat it as an anti-abortion judge and to fight his confirmation and urge that the Senate do the same.
And a pro-choice Republican said flatly, if Souter is anti-choice, he won't be confirmed.
If this Senate knew, or even highly suspected, even if he hadn't actually said, I will overturn Roe, I think if we actually thought that or knew that, he could not be confirmed.
Whatever the case, Souter wasn't sharing his views with anyone when he arrived at the Capitol yesterday. His confirmation hearings won't begin until fall, and for now, he plans to keep them guessing. Bob Schieffer, CBS News at the Capitol.
There are new charges today in the HUD scandal. They come from the House subcommittee that has investigated allegations of fraud and mismanagement during the Reagan administration. The panel says there is evidence that former Housing Secretary Samuel Pierce may have broken the law by steering government business to his former law firm. Pierce denies any wrongdoing. Budget negotiations and negotiators are stepping up the pace of their talks. They have a series of daily meetings scheduled this week in Washington. Both sides agreed yesterday to tone down their political rhetoric. President Bush could not resist some digs during campaign speeches, so he softened the edges last night in New York.
When are they going to start demanding results and stop measuring the value of a program by the size of its price tag? I welcome sincere efforts from both sides of the aisle, and I'm eager to get an agreement with congressional leaders to achieve meaningful budget reform.
The president will be involved personally in the talks this week. A warning to those of you who bought Shop and Save bleach or ammonia within the last week. Hannaford Brothers Company says some of its 64-ounce ammonia containers were mislabeled. What you have to do to be sure is check the cap. A blue cap means it's bleach. A white cap is used on ammonia bottles. Also, check the production code that's located on the bottle's shoulder, just above the label. Incorrectly labeled bottles have the code 019321. That's 019321. If you have an incorrectly labeled bottle, you can return it for a refund or an exchange. Also, there are no longer any mislabeled bottles on Shop and Save shelves. Some residents of South Berwick have an unwanted neighbor, one they know they can't get rid of. That neighbor is the Hooper Sands toxic waste site. The people living near it know that selling their land will be very difficult. When it was appraised, it was valued at $0. With that in mind, the residents say all they're looking for is to make the dump less dangerous. But as News 13's Jennifer Sabi reports, they say they haven't gotten much help.
These home videos are more like a horror show for the Roy family. Rather than documenting the growth of their 6-year-old daughter, they're using a home video camera to document how easy it is for someone to cross into the middle of a toxic waste dump.
The purpose of it was just to show them, give them documented evidence that you can go on the site, you know, that we went on the site, that there was no signs when we went on the site until we went through the main gate, and we know a lot more than a small child does.
While the EPA works to clean up this site containing drums of toxic waste, a guard is posted 24 hours a day to keep trespassers out. But even a guard admitted the dump is so large it's impossible for one man to monitor the entire area.
It's as easy for two adults with a video camera to cross a backyard and get into the waste site as it is for a child with a toy. So the Roy family, who has a 6-year-old daughter, is asking the EPA to put up a fence around the property.
I just feel that she may decide any day to go across the border there and take her toys over there and play around. I fear for her because it's dangerous chemicals over there.
The Roys say the EPA has told them a 24-hour guard is enough to keep trespassers out, but the Roys want more, so they plan on sending this tape to the EPA in an effort to convince them that a fence is needed. Jennifer Sabi, News 13 in South Berwick.
News 13 has not been able to get a comment from the EPA on this subject. A symbolic day at Seabrook today. The nuclear power plant is being dedicated. A flip of the switch will make it official that the plant